Hi, I'm Judy Otten, one of the principals with Advanced Decisions, and today I'm going to be talking about what to consider when creating a requirements process. So one big misconception is that some processes don't require requirements, specifically Agile. But it does. They're just called stories in an Agile process. In other processes, they're typically called requirements. What you want to do is make sure that you have enough information so that the developers know what they're developing, not necessarily how they're going to do it, but what they're developing. And they have enough information that they can give you an estimate. So just saying you're going to create an employee screen is, yes, it tells them what they're going to develop, but they can't do an estimate from that. So you need a little bit more detail. And finally, in Agile specifically, you want to make your stories, which are the analogy to requirements, you want to make your stories small enough that they can be completed in one sprint or one cycle or one iteration. So that may mean breaking down your employee screen, for example, into name and address. You want to create name and address for an employee, and you can do that in one iteration. And the next iteration might be work history or salary history, just so that it's tight enough to fit into one cycle. So requirements should not be done in a paragraph format. It makes them so hard to read and so hard to follow, and it makes it so easy to miss something. There are lots of good ways to write requirements. There are use cases, and there are storyboards and different kinds of techniques that you can get trained on. But actually, one of the most effective and easy ways to write requirements is simple bullet points. You can include pictures too if you like, but just simple bullet points saying, do this, do this, do this, and then when you press finish, this is what happens, or when you press next, this is what happens. Easy peasy, doesn't require any fancy training or fancy tools or anything like that. And finally, make sure to stay away from implementation details. Your requirement should be what you're developing, not how you're developing it. It's critical to have someone that represents the user in requirements development. In an Agile process, it's the product owner, or sometimes even it's a real user. In some other kinds of structures and processes, there may be a product management function or a marketing function that's serving as a proxy for the user. Ideally, having a user review your requirements is great because they're the ones that are going to be using it. So they're the ones that are going to be most likely to tell you, yes, this is going to work, no, this is going to work. And they're not going to get everything right because it's hard to do that just from what's on paper, but they're so much more knowledgeable about their world than even your most knowledgeable developer. Now, that said, you also want your developers involved in a requirements review because the developers need to be able to say, that's great, but I also need to know these things. What happens when an error occurs? What happens when this happens? What if this happens? And finally, you want your testing folks involved in requirements so they can identify what needs to be tested, what needs to be checked. They can also start building the test cases as the development's going along, so that gives them a good head start. Thanks so much for watching. This is Judy Otten from Advanced Decisions. Give us a call and let us help you develop wisely.